Right there is Lake Superior.
Right here is my new Coot. This thing is sweet. What's not so sweet about it is this trailer that needs to make a 6-hour trip home. So to start, it doesn't have any lights, so we're gonna fix that real quick. The bearings have been greased, those tires need to be changed, but I've only got to make it an hour or so tonight to a rental house, and then we'll probably swap some tires around and make this thing a little bit better. But for now, I need to make it legal-ish. So we're gonna swap some lights on it, and then when I get to my resting place for the night, we'll do a little walk around on this guy. All right, we got some lights. I went ahead and swapped on my new tires, which are actually a little smaller in diameter, but better than these weather checked ones. Those things are pretty ancient. We do have a spare. Checked our bearings, they are packed. The guy did that for me. All our lugs are tight. Hitch looks good. I just gotta secure this wiring and then we're out of here. So we headed south, and man, was this thing in a beautiful area of Wisconsin. We were right under Lake Superior, which has some beautiful lakes and hunting areas, and a town named Hayward, which apparently sucks. Since we were in the area, we stopped in a cool museum / welcome center to Wisconsin that had quite a few cool displays on Lake Superior. But most importantly, it had a crow's nest I could get a bird's eye view of my Coot from. Well, while I'm driving to my rental house for the night, you are going to get an impromptu history lesson on what a Coot is and how they came about. So, in 1967, a man named Carl Enos Jr. built the first Coot in his garage. He was just 18 years old at the time, and he built a company that lasted all the way till 1985, which is when the last Coots were produced, and the company was basically, for lack of better terms, went out of business. Now, in 2006 or so, a company did buy out the rights to Coot and built a Coot 2, which is a much more modern version, but we're not going to get into those because I don't have one. So anyway, a Coot is a articulating, full-time, four-wheel drive amphibious machine. Basically, this was one of the very, very early ATVs. This was out around the same time as the 6x6 Argo type machines, and these were the kings. Sadly, there's just not a whole lot of information at the time out on the web. All the information I gave you here either came from Wikipedia or 6x6world.com. Just like this sweet pamphlet I found of all the accessories you could get for your Coot, which quite a few of these I do actually have, which is kind of cool. Well, it's almost dark. I left my house before light this morning to go get this thing. So I left eastern Iowa at 6 o'clock this morning, drove all the way up to 10 minutes away from Lake Superior, which is where this thing lived. So, this is what I believe to be a mid-60s or early 60s. I'm not exactly sure. I don't know where the serial numbers are. I've never seen one of these in person, so I don't know anything about them other than what I read on the internet this week, waiting to go get it. But this is a Coot. It is an articulating, four-wheel drive, amphibious, two-wheel steer, because there were two-wheel steer and four-wheel steer machine. I have wanted one of these for a while. It was one of those things I wanted, but I never thought I would have. I've never seen one that I could actually afford that was in savable condition. And this one is in actually really decent condition. I wouldn't say great. So the story I got on it, I am the third owner. The first owner bought it as he had a cabin up here in Wisconsin and needed a machine to haul materials and stuff out to his cabin. It sounded like it was in a pretty remote area. So he used it for that and allegedly took it out on Lake Superior to go fishing, which is just mind-boggling to me. So, pretty cool story. The guy I got it from had this, and he also had another 6x6 kind of tracked thing that I had never seen. I wish I would have gotten a picture of it, but he wanted to keep that one and had to get rid of one of them, so the Coot had to go. So, that's kind of its story. Let's just, I guess, talk about its condition. So it's got four, I think these are Pennsylvania. They're called Pennsylvania somethings. But I believe these are the original tires. Yeah, these are just called Pennsylvania Mud Snow tires. And they are in an 885-15. You would see these on like a Willys Jeep. They're super skinny and not a ton of tread, and that's good because this thing is all-time 4x4 all the time. There's no locking it in and out. So going down the road, this thing needs to skid and slide a little bit to steer. So I don't really have any plans to change the tires. They are in rough shape, but he said they all hold air. We'll see. You just check out the sidewall there. And I really do believe they are the original tires or close to it. So that's what we got for wheels and tires. Now the hull is in pretty good shape for the most part. I wish it wouldn't have been painted. I don't mind the blue. It could have been done a little better, but hey, it's an old Coot, and it's better that way than it rotting out. Now the underside has not been painted, and I noticed earlier when I was working on the trailer, seemed like there might have been a soft spot somewhere in here. Now the guy I bought it from never floated it, so I don't know. I didn't buy it anticipating it to be, water worthy without any issues. If we have to patch the floor, I'm not going to be upset by any means. I almost expect it. The good thing is it seemed like it didn't sit outside too much, so it didn't collect water. I mean, you can see from the top here, it's all there. So that is a good thing. So up here we have our air filter, exhaust. It does have 2 seating areas, which is cool. So you can fit 4 people in this thing. Now coming off the back here is what I think is one of the cooler parts. I don't really like it aesthetically for my purposes, but it does have a full, I guess this would be a tiller. Not just, that would be a rudder, but I think that would be a tiller. So it has a tiller so you can actually steer it. And not all of them had it, but this one has the output for a propeller. Now I don't have the propeller, but I assume I can probably find a universal one that will work. I don't know. I'm not too worried about it. They are supposed to be able to be propelled by just the tires alone. I don't know. Coming over to this side, pretty much the same as the other, just no air filter or exhaust. But the cool thing about this side is these 2 are original wheels. And I know that because they have these little tabs here. So what those little tabs are for, hold on, let me clean the camera off here. I do apologize, it's getting close to dark, but I wanted to get a video about it out. Down there, and I don't want to disturb everything too much, but you see those chains? Those are some sort of mud paddle thing that go around the tires and lock onto the rims and give you really heavy duty bar traction aids, I guess, to get through deep mud and stuff. Now I have 3 of the wheels. I don't have the 4th. This is the 3rd one. So I guess really, maybe those 2 aren't original tires. Maybe the original wheels rotted out. I don't know. Who knows? I don't really care about originality that much. But at least we have 3 of the original wheels. And really, I could replicate these extremely easily. So I may do that just to try out the little bar things. And the last thing that makes this thing kind of cool, it's already really cool, but it makes this one kind of special, is it has one of the, I believe, original, this looks like an original, hand crank winches. Now, I thought in the pictures on Facebook that this was just some add-on by someone at some point, but I really do think these are original. It says Howard H159 on it. Pretty cool little winch. It might have had a roll bar on it, some of these. It was like an add-on to get a roll bar kit on the front. I wouldn't mind replicating that. They look kind of cool that way, I think. But just check the thing out. Anyway, let's hop up here. Now, obviously, the seats have had to have been reupholstered at some point. They look pretty decent. It's got some tape going on there. That's a spare tire. There's the trailer's tires that I replaced. Otherwise, let me go ahead and bust this strap off here so you guys can see the motor and everything. So under the seat here, we have a little Tecumseh. I think this is a 12 horsepower. Just basically a lawnmower engine. The only thing different about it is it has this shrouding to suck air in to cool the engine. Not the air intake's up there, but the flywheel cooling fan draws in air through that shrouding to cool off the engine since it's not water cooled. That's really the only difference between this and just like a Sears Suburban tractor from the same era. Now it does run. I heard it run at the guy's house. It does have electric, and you can wrap a string around it. Now, he said the electric had typically worked, but it didn't want to work today for us. You you just get some clicking. So that's going to be the highest priority for sure, because let's be honest, this thing's going to be temperamental, I bet. I just noticed the oil catch down there. That's great. Anyway, basically these things run off of a clutch system, like a snowmobile sort of. So it's just, there's no clutch pedal. It sits at idle, it doesn't move. You rev it up, the clutch engages, and that belt grabs. And then there is a 2-speed transmission, 2-speed forward, 1-speed reverse. And that runs, as you can see here, so the belt comes in here, transmission, then the chain over to the drive shaft, which goes up to a front gearbox, and then somewhere back there is a rear gearbox. And then from what I believe, it's just axles straight across with universal joints at the end of these for steering, and just solid axles back there. I did not get to see this thing drive, so the guy seemed very nice, very respectable. I don't think we'll have any issues there. I didn't want to make him unload it from the trailer just to show me it drive around. And if I have to fix something, I have to fix something. It's an older machine. It can be expected. So that's the general premise of it. This is the brake, which is a disc brake of sorts. Then there's the hand throttle and a foot throttle. That's a light switch for lights that don't exist anymore. We have an amp meter, and that is it. These are pretty bare bones. I am really pumped to have this thing. I mean, I never thought I'd have one. I always wanted one, but I never actually thought I'd own one, and now I have one. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. It is pretty large. It's like 8 feet long by 5.5 feet wide, so it takes up a good chunk of garage space. And I did pay a price for it. I didn't get it for a steal, that's for sure, but I think I paid a fair price, and the guy was happy, so I'm happy. Now, as to the fate of this thing, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Originally, I was planning on just buying it, making a couple of videos, and passing it along to the next guy, but I have a bad hunch I will fall in love with this thing. And the only real problem with that is I already have an amphibious vehicle that I don't do anything with. I have my Atex, which I made some videos on about 2 years ago. That is a 6x6 with a 300cc two-stroke engine in it that needs a restoration, and I haven't given it a restoration yet, and here I am buying another amphibian. So I feel kind of bad about that. So anyway, we are still in northern Wisconsin. We drove about an hour and a half on the way home. We'll have to do the other 4.5 hours tomorrow, and then hopefully we can knock this thing off the trailer and go for a little spin. It did come with this trailer, and knock on wood, it's been doing okay after I checked the bearings and swapped tires out. But we still have a long way to go, so I am not going to jinx myself. But that did make it a nicer deal. So yeah, I'm going to go relax because I did like 10 hours of driving today. And hopefully tomorrow we find some cool stuff on the way home. All right, it's the next morning. It's freezing. It's not really freezing. I'm still in shorts. But I mean, it's a lot colder than yesterday. So, spent the night in an Airbnb. Pretty nice place. A lot better than camping. There is a lake all the way through there, which is pretty cool. Decently cheap place. I think it was like $90, which ended up actually being like $170 by the time you pay all Airbnb's fees and stuff, which is BS, but whatever. Enough complaining about Airbnb. We checked the tires, aired them up a little bit. They were sitting at like 50 psi. I bumped them up a little to 60. Checked our lug nuts, checked our hitch, and we should be good to go, I think. We got 5 hours to go today, it looks like, according to GPS. And hopefully we'll find some cool stuff along the way. So one weird thing I noticed yesterday on our trip is I must have, I don't know, hit some, what do you call it? Jeez, roadkill, jeez. Because I got some piece of mystery meat on my truck fender. Probably should get that off of there so it doesn't hurt the paint. Oh, it's like, okay, it's part of the paint now, great. Oh, JCB farm tractor, cool. So we've seen all these tractors and trailers. And I would guess they're going to this gigantic silage pile. Sorry, I thought there was a cop. There's a gigantic silage pile over here with a, looks like a 9RX deer pushing up stuff. Check out the bar. It's got a chainsaw. John's Red advertisement as its ad. That's cool. Well, if you haven't figured it out by now, I kind of have some hoarder tendencies. So whenever we're in a new area like this, I like to stop at any antique store that piques my interest. We thought this would be a good one because it's an old barn. But man, were the prices pretty outrageous. They wanted $90 for that toy. Well, we're just about home. The dogs are over there doing a pee break. The Coot is looking cool as ever. And I'm struggling to get fuel into my truck because this gas station, well, it's a deli, truck stop, liquor store, cheese store, and a laundry place. But they only have the big pumps, and the Ford and the flatbed combo does not like the big pump. So I've been standing here for 10 minutes and I have 4 gallons into it. So that's great. Anyway, we're only about an hour away from home, or a little over an hour. And knock on wood, everything seems to be going pretty good. The trailer I am pretty surprised by. Like I said, knock on wood, because I still need to get home. There's my Coot, and there's my garage. So that can only mean one thing, and that is that we made it. Now it is just about 6 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon. I left my house at 6 a.m. Saturday morning. So I spent 36 hours going to get this thing. Now we did stay in the night over in Wisconsin. Kind of made a little bit of a trip out of it, which is nice because even if this thing doesn't work out, I have the memories of the trip and had a lot of fun. On top of getting an awesome little machine. So I am really impressed by this trailer. Now I did have the bearings. The guy packed the bearings for me and I threw new tires on it. So that was the best chance this thing was going to have. And it held up. I felt the hubs every single time I stopped and they never got hot. I can't complain about this trailer. I was planning on even maybe ditching the trailer at the guy's house and throwing this thing on the bed of my truck. I would have had to remove a toolbox to do it. So that kind of shows you my confidence level in this trailer. But it worked. So I think I'll probably keep this thing around. There's a chance I might sell this trailer to try and recoup some of the money from this thing. But it would be really handy to have a little trailer around. If I keep it, I'll definitely do some bracing on the neck and maybe put a new floor in it because this thing's about to fall out of there. So I am going to go ahead and unload this thing. We'll take it out in the yard, hopefully, if it wants to start up, and we'll do a nice little walk around on it. Now, this trailer is nothing special. It wasn't built for Coots or anything like that. It's just the guy happened to have it. But it is really nice. It's got these chain binders. I've never seen such small chain binders. And they have like a really nice spot to attach them. That's a lot nicer than wrapping a strap around the axles. All right, we got it tilted. Now the fellow I bought this from said the brakes work, but I don't know if they work this good. I think I was originally going to utilize the winch, but I don't know. I think I'll run out of cable before it gets down the trailer, but we'll at least start out using it and then we can reassess when it's halfway down the trailer and stuck there. All right, it is the next day. In the last clip, you saw me get it off the trailer. And last night after dark, I went ahead and pulled the Tecumseh starter. Let's do a little bench test and see what happens. We got a jump pack hooked up. No dice. Ah, there we go. All right, so far, I mean, the exciter brushes don't seem too worn out. A little, some signs of corrosion, that's for sure. Let's pop this other end off somehow or another. I think I need to tap these bolts through. All right, we moved over to the vise because I had to tap this end off. But we've got the main armatures coming out. So some of the packing in there, not great. Never seen this kind of white fuzz. It's probably asbestos or something I absolutely should not be touching. Ugh. Drop you guys down and get a inside view. I see some corrosion going on. But that's a good thing because that gives me something I can clean up and try and fix. All right, now that this thing's undergone a complete and total rebuild, let's see if it works. Oh yeah. Man, the value on this machine just went up 10% with that complete rebuild. Sweet. No more pulling. And as you see, we got it working again. So I did actually have this thing running last night, but it was too dark and it has no lights. So I really couldn't get any good video, but I took it for a spin, and as you'll be able to hear in this next clip, I was pretty excited. All right, it's running like dog. I think it's getting too much fuel. Try and limit it a little bit. But it runs and drives. And the brakes work. Oh yeah, we're in reverse. So it did run and drive, but I didn't get to do much. Now the biggest issue this thing has is the carburetor's float seems to sink. Now this is an HH120 Tecumseh. These came in like Sears Suburban Garden tractors and all sorts of things. Pretty common engine. There is a Chinese replica carb out there, and I did go ahead and do the big forbidden thing and ordered one. I will pull the Tecumseh, Walboro original carb apart and see if I can save that float. Hopefully it's just a little pinhole in the float, or I can replace the needle. I don't know. But for today, I want to ride it around and get some video of me riding it around. So we are just going to regulate the fuel manually and try not to let the float sink. And when it does, it just pees out a little peephole. It doesn't go into the engine, which is good. So I'm just going to take it for a little spin around the backyard. I did also order some oil to service the differentials, which I don't think are actually called differentials. These are called something else on a Coot, like the power dividers, I think. It is mostly greased up and stuff, so I think it's in good shape. We will also change the transmission oil, the engine oil, of course. Now, the guy I bought it from had it rigged up for a boat tank with an electric pump, and I was originally hoping that the electric pump was just too much for the needle and seat, but that is not the case. Even with gravity, it is not good. So I rigged up this gravity tank anyway just to help it out some. But without further ado, let's go for a ride in my Coot. turning radius sucks. Alright, well, it does run and drive. I can say that. Definitely needs some work. We need to remedy this temporary fuel system and put the original style tank back on the fender here. I would like to stop getting poked in the back by these screws that protrude right into the backrest. It needs a full service. I'm going to do the service on the gearboxes, the engine, grease it. We just got a bunch of little work to do to it. Hopefully it shouldn't take too long. So let's get into that after I get out of this thing. All right, so I was deciding where I wanted to start here. I just noticed something. There is a missing joint in there. So that is for where the rudder would attach back here. So we had the shaft out here, which is nice that they left the part that passes through the body, but I don't know what happened to that joint. That's probably why the propeller's missing. So that's gonna have to go on the list. That won't be fixed today. But I think to start, I wanna pop open these power dividers and see what's going on inside. I'm really curious to see the shape of those. And then we need to figure out how to drain them. And I got some very specific oil these things take, and you'll see why in a minute. All right, we'll go ahead and clean off that cover before we pull it. This is from the front power divider. Like to prevent anything falling in there if I can. All right. These are just 7/16 head bolts. Now I'm hoping I don't see anything bad in here because we don't hear any bad noises when I'm riding around. But it is a brass gear, so I do expect some wear. Let's see. Huh, okay. Well, that is definitely been in before. That is a Kellogg's box as a gasket, which, hey, seemed like it worked, so can't fault them. There's the rest of the gasket there, yeah. Wonder how old that is. Cars and something. It was definitely a NASCAR Kellogg box. All right, that's cool. Let me get you off the tripod and you guys can see what's going on in there. All right, we got some light on the situation. Oh, no we don't. This thing just died. Okay, cool. Ugh. All right, we got some light on the situation now. Looks like there's a good bit of water in there, just based on how easily it flows around. But otherwise, that gear looks pretty good. Now that one looks like steel. So I'm guessing the one underneath, or the ones on the axle shafts, are brass. I can't see. I see one gigantic gear down there, but maybe you can see the shiny part. It looks okay from what I can see, but let's go ahead and figure out how to drain that out of there and see if we can get a better view. I can't figure out how to get the oil out of this guy. So we're gonna move on to the next thing. Now I checked the service manual and did a bunch of digging online. Could not figure out, I figured there would be a drain plug, but I couldn't find one. I assume I'm probably gonna have to suck all the fluid out of there or drain it out of an axle shaft, but I've got to post in a Facebook forum for these things to hopefully get a good answer before I do anything stupid. So we're gonna move on to the next thing, which is trying to get it to run a little better. which I think that issue lies within this carburetor, which is not a carburetor cleaning issue. It is a needle and seat problem, I'm pretty sure. So we're going to open this carb up and check it out. I do have a replacement carb. I would much prefer to keep the original if we can. No matter what, I won't throw this thing away. But for the time being, we might swap that Chinese one on because I want to ride this thing this weekend and don't have time to wait for genuine Walboro parts to show up. How do they expect you to get to that other bolt? Do you get to pull this? Who knows? How do you get to that little nut? I don't know. I guess we're going to have to pull that shrouding, which kind of stinks. Feels pretty silly just to get the carburetor off. Lovely. So I'm going to go ahead and do myself a future favor and rip off this backrest. That's a later problem. We got the shrouding kind of out of the way, which is just pulling 2 head bolts. And hopefully we can get this carb out of here now. Looks like we should. All right, I'm going to get that pulled off and we'll have a look at it on the bench. Let's get you zoomed in real nice. All right, so let's do the big reveal and see what is under the bowl. This does seem to be the original carburetor, which is great. Oh, wow. All right, I was not expecting that out of a running machine. Holy cow. Oh, that is one of the worst bowls I've seen in a while, and I've seen some bad ones. Sorry, I'm trying to keep it centered here. All right, so that's something. Wow. Why is the bowl like that? It's like it's crushed. I've never seen a bowl that looks like that. I wonder if there was water in here. Let me zoom out, I'm sorry. I wonder if there was water in here. I mean, there was definitely water in here. But I wonder if that water froze and that's what caused this to happen. That is disgusting. I don't know how this thing ran. I mean, that's incredible. Wow. This might take the cake as the worst looking carburetor on a machine that actually ran and drove. And that bowl's just crazy looking. Unless that's what these Walboros are supposed to look like, but I don't think so. Look at the inlet. Dog's going crazy. All right, well, I have recovered from being in awe at the condition of this carburetor. This thing is roached. But I hope we can save it. And don't get me wrong, this is not the... I'm not shy to bad carburetors, that's for sure. I've dealt with ones that look worse than this and brought them back. It's just that this one ran, which blows me away. Now I'm being very careful to only grab the very tippy top of this pivot, which you're not supposed to grab it with pliers no matter what, but there was no coming out. Wow, our needle looks remarkably good. I'm betting, well, I can hear fluid in that. So I bet there's a pinhole in this and that's why our carb sinks all the time. Also, that spring's destroyed. I think this thing's gonna see the Chinese carburetor for sure. There's another portion of the spring. Ugh. All right. Let's get out our Chinese replica and see how close it is and see how good of a job they did. Because I don't think this carburetor is going back on it tonight. All right, we got our replica out of the box here, and it looks remarkably close. If not, perfect. Looks like the choke's a hair different. But it's close enough, I'm definitely gonna go ahead and use it. So I did think about taking this thing apart and throwing parts of this thing, but this housing is just disgusting. I'm not gonna throw this carb out, of course. I will find a float for it. This one definitely got smushed when some water in the bowl froze, is my guess. And I could hear liquid in it, so it's got a hole in it. So we'll need to replace the bowl. We'll go ahead and order a new needle and seat, just a complete rebuild kit as well, and we can throw this one back on there. But for now, I'm going to commit the cardinal sin and put a Chinese carb on it. All right, our shiny new little Chinesium carburetor's in there. So the next step is to remedy the fuel system. So the guy has this electric pump in here, but it was somewhat unreliable, and I don't know. Why rely on that when I can just put a factory tank back in this spot? So I think I have one that should work. Let's see. So back here we have our Honda Odyssey. This one's a 77 that we have scavenged quite a few parts off of. I've sold a lot of stuff off of here. And this has a nice little plastic tank off of a Cub Cadet. I think it may work. All right, so we scavenged that. And it's just got a nice little nipple on the bottom. That should work good. It's even got a pulse pump. We won't use that, but I'll throw that in my parts bin for spare Odyssey parts. The tank has some nasty looking stuff in it, but it is plastic, so it should clean up pretty easily. Well, I was really hoping to use this tank, but this little fitting down here is just plugged full of gunk. You can see I have it gutted, but just up into the tank itself. I mean, this thing's full of water, and I can't get anything out of it, so I don't think our free tank is gonna do us any good. All right, so with the fuel tank a failure, we are moving on to the next project, which is finally figuring out how to service these rear ends. Now, I did some research and found out the only way to get fluid out of them is through the top like this. So I went and picked up a turkey baster, which I will reuse in my kitchen. And man, just look at all the water coming out of there. I assume at some point this thing must have sat outside if it's got this much water in it. It's like 50% gear oil, 50% water. But hopefully it didn't do any real damage. Ugh. Alright, this is going to take a little while. I will check back in when I go to flush this thing out and fill it with fuel. Fluid. Geez, not fuel. Alright, so to aid us in getting all the gear oil down to the one side, to get it all out, we got it jacked up here. And you can see how it articulates now. Pretty cool. Here's all the goop that came out of it already. Alright, we got our cover back on and siliconed up. So the front one's done. I'll do the back one off camera because it's the same. Unless we find anything weird in there, which I hope we don't. Now, I did fire it up once last night just to test the carburetor out real quick, and it runs just as bad. It acts the exact same way. It acts like it's getting either way too much fuel or not enough fuel. I can't really tell. So I went ahead and pulled all the shrouding off here so I could actually get to the adjustments on the carburetor, the idle, and the fuel mixture screw. Yeah, the shrouding's all right here, which is just good. Its purpose is to draw air in. Kind of silly because it draws it in past the exhaust, so it already makes the air hot before it hits the head, but it's original. It's what's supposed to be there. I'll put it back on when I'm done. I'm also going to go ahead and gut all the old fuel system stuff out of here because I don't plan to use that pump or anything. And let's see if we can get it fired up and tuned up a little bit. Maybe I'll do a before and an after because it'll probably take me a while to get it tuned in. Before we fired it up, I figured I should probably check on the spark plug since this thing had seemed to be really rich all the time. And it is pretty properly fouled up, so we're going to clean that up. All right, I cleaned up the spark plug. Let's see if it runs any better now. That starter is annoyingly slow. We need more power. Well, I think the starter that we rebuilt in the beginning of the video is giving up. We have a lot of amperage going to it. 105 cold cranking amps going to it. So on top of the big battery. So I think we need to order one of those guys. All right, not sure why, but all of a sudden the electric start wanted to party and it fired right up. So we got it quite a bit closer to tuned in with just adjusting the main jet down there. A little tough to get to on this motor, but not bad. So it's not really fun to reach under there, but I'm going to go ahead and keep working on adjusting that main jet and the idle circuit and see if we can get it to idle nicely and throttle up and down like it should. I think we can. It's just a matter of getting it fired up again if the starter wants to party. So with the engine and fuel system taken care of, we need to move on to the next thing, which I think is going to be this upholstery in the back, which was pretty rough because there was some screws hanging out in your back. So someone's already done some pretty nice work on the driver's seat here. There was something very rusty sitting here for a long time. But we need to go ahead and button this back cushion back together, attach it to that board so that we don't have screws poking through. And this is where we should probably pull this board out and replace it because it's structurally compromised. I'm pretty confident I could break this over my knee if I needed to. But we're not going to do that. We're just going to put some structural staples in it and call it good. All right, we had to grab some longer screws to get a bite into our slightly moist wood. Let's get this back into its spot. Be a lot easier with the second set of hands. All right, I said I wouldn't bore you guys with the same thing twice, but here's an example of what the gearboxes should look like. Now that rust is not good, but that did sit suspended outside of oil for probably years when this thing, I'm sure this thing sat at some point. But no water got in here, which is awesome because the oil level is exactly where it should be. Now I can't hardly see the bottom gear at all, but I reached down in there and it felt good. And this one actually has an original seal around it, which is nice. All right, we're draining yet another fluid out of this little thing. We are draining the engine oil out of this little HH120. Pretty easy, since someone left us their custom-made quart-sized drain pan. Not that bad to do. I've already taken like 3/4 of a quart out of there, and I think we'll have at least one more to go. And then hopefully we're done. That one's getting full. I gotta put the camera down. All right, I got some random jug of SAE 30, and that's what's gonna go in this thing because it's either that or 1540. And I figured this would be better for it. All right, we are so close to being done changing oils in this thing. I have one more thing to change, that's the transmission fluid. But before I did that, I wanted to take a little break from draining stuff and decided to tackle the battery connections. So let's go have a look at the old ones before I show you the new ones. So in here on the garage floor was the old battery connections, which are not original because it shouldn't have this long of connections. It should actually been right next to the motor. So this was added by someone along the way, and it is just torn up in many places and really crappy ends. So I decided to go ahead and replace all the cables. So we didn't use new cable necessarily. I always keep good heavy duty cable around when I find it, whether I'm parting out something or whatever. So we have 2 new cables run to the solenoid and the ground up here, back to the battery. Now we zip tied them up a little better than they used to be so that they are not near the clutch. It looks close to the clutch, but it's not. And then we have a big piece of radiator hose in the pass-through to help protect it when it articulates. Now, I have committed 2 sins on this machine with the Chinese carburetor now, and the second, even more heinous act of clamp-on battery terminals. Really don't like these little guys. They work in a pinch, but they are not a long-term solution. I am out of crimp-on battery connectors, and the local hardware store didn't have any. They only had those guys, so I will order those and replace that in the future. We also got a battery hold down, but not really in the mood to fabricate anything right now. I have to pull this thing back into the garage, which is not an easy feat. Pulled it out last night to go for a ride with some family. So next time we have it inside and have the welder hooked up, we will build a battery hold down bracket, but I don't think that's going anywhere right now anyway. So with that, let's move on to the last thing. Let's see if battery connections helped with the starting situation at all. No. Okay. I did find that starter online last night for $50. We'll go ahead and order that. But before we do that, let's change the transmission fluid. Today's gloop of choice is Quicksilver Marine SAE 90. It's the only SAE 90 gear oil that the local farm supply store had. I'm assuming it's probably for lower units on outdrives. But it should work great for our transmission, which we made a huge mess changing. But I wanted to highlight something in case you own a Coot. So there are 3 plugs on the side of the trans, and let me wipe off the camera lens. All right, hopefully that's better. So the very bottom small one there, that's your drain. And then the next one up is your fill, which I wasn't quite sure because the transmission took about half the oil capacity that I thought before it started coming out of that middle plug there. Now the top, much bigger plug, that is for your detent adjustment for your shifter. So don't go pulling that out of there for sure. And then you just go ahead and fill the oil through the breather here, which is drilled very incorrectly, but hey, drilled is drilled. So we officially have all the oils in this thing, and let's move on to greasing. As you can tell, I greased it, trashed a pair of gloves while doing it. So this thing has 2 grease fittings at each U-joint, one on the shaft body itself for this spline section, 2 more at that U-joint. There's 1 at this pillow block where the chain rides. But the weird thing I want to ask you guys is, why is there no grease fitting on this pillow block and it doesn't look greased? Maybe that was a sealed bearing one, I don't know. What else? There are a grease fitting there, a grease fitting at the bottom of the steering thing, and then 1 at each U-joint, and the like pillow block dudes on the outside for the rear axle. So it took about a tube of grease, but we got it done, and I got coated. Oh, there's also like 6 Zerk fittings on the body joint here, which all of them except for 1 took grease, so that's really good. You can actually see it poking through there. So we'll probably grease that pretty often because I do not want to wear that out. I don't know how the hell you would fix that on these. Probably a real pain in the neck. So this thing's ready to roll now, I think. Except for this 4-wheeler being in the way, which is missing a tire. All right, so we got this thing pulled outside. It's getting close to dark now. It's actually the next day. Yeah, so that's going to finish up this video. I would love to get you some more riding around footage, but sadly the backyard is just too small for the crappy steering radius on this thing. So the next video I'm going to do on this thing is going to be filmed this weekend, and that's going to be me taking it for a ride and seeing what this thing is capable of. And keep an eye out. That'll be the week after you see this video, or if you are seeing this years down the road, I will link it right after this clip. But anyway, in today's video, we went all the way up to Lake Superior, which is about a 6-hour drive for me. Picked this baby up, towed it home on an incredibly sketchy trailer with 0 issues. Got very lucky. And then when we got it home, got it fired up, replaced on the starter, replaced on the carburetor, a new temporary fuel system, did a full service from the torque transmitters, transmissions, engine, and greased the drive line. Got some new battery cables, and just kind of freshened this thing up mechanically because I want it to be a really reliable machine. So, I do have one more question for you guys before I let you go, and that is, what do I do with it cosmetically now? I'm not a huge fan of the blue paint. I really wish it was this original red color it's supposed to be. I prefer patina over a, kind of half-assed paint job. No offense to the previous owner in any way, but I just wouldn't have painted it this blue. He said he just had it. So I was thinking about changing it up maybe, and I can't go back to original. I mean, I could just paint it the original color, but I was thinking kind of a red-based camo, like use the same red that this thing's supposed to be as the base color, and then do a camouflage scheme. I will put up a picture of kind of what I'm thinking. So I'd like to do that. I would like to get a original style roll bar on it, and I'll get a picture of what those look like. And I'd really love to put a set of wide tires back on it, but this thing I think has original tires on it. These are said to be the best for them with the 4-wheel drive all-time. These just skid nicely on the street and everything. You put big wide tires on something like this and you put a lot more stress on the axles. So I don't know. I definitely would like to paint it. Definitely would like to put a roll bar on it, but I guess we'll see how much fun it is to ride around this weekend. That'll really show me what I want to know. But let me know down in the comments what I should do with this thing. I also want to get original headlights for it that go right here. So thank you guys for watching. I am sorry to do all this work and not really get to show you any play, but that'll be in the next video, which I hope to see you guys on. So until then, have a good one.